Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Fintech Talk by Georgia Fintech Academy podcast. We are excited to have a really interesting topic here today to discuss with you around financial inclusion and some of the exciting things that Green Dot is doing. And I think, my time and years have gone back with Crystal Bryant-Minter, who is our guest today, just from the industry and her strong presence in the industry. I have run into her. I feel like our reunions are always centered around industry conferences, some of the biggest conferences that are bringing people around the globe around fintech and financial services. She's also an advocate for Next Gen, and you can see she's wearing a Georgia Fintech Academy sweatshirt on the podcast representing, and also that donation went towards scholarships, so super appreciative of her beyond volunteering for this podcast specifically. Crystal, it's so nice to have you today. Wanted to give you a few minutes to introduce yourself and your background.
I'm Crystal Bryant-Minter. I lead money movement at Green Dot Corporation. I've been in the fintech industry over 20 years. I started my career on the processing side with TSYS, by which I then found myself at a startup, a prepaid company called Insight that eventually was acquired by Green Dot. Early in my career at Green Dot, retail side, particularly in our financial service center division, and more recently in the last 2 years on our money movement side. So thank you again for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk about financial inclusion. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and it fuels my motivation and career here at Green Dot, especially how we can impact the lives of everyday Americans.
No, it's exciting to hear that. And I think about, just the journey that you've outlined and having various roles and, progressing in your career. One of the things I really love in having these conversations is trying to get down to the root of what got you into this industry in the first place. What was your background and how did you start, pursuing a career in this industry?
Yeah, so I would say my journey in fintech is both deeply personal and some experiences in my professional life. So growing up, witnessing my mother and how traditional banking often impacted families in terms of access or limited access. So my mom was an immigrant with limited formal education and limited financial literacy. And we were also a military family. So we moved around often, which meant we had to constantly change banks. And she often faced different hurdles, keeping up with our financial needs. And so, I saw my mom highly rely on non-traditional kind of banking services. So lots of cash, when it came to lending, borrowing within the community as opposed to going to a traditional bank and asking for a loan, and just always just finding creative ways to make ends meet. In addition, early in my career, actually my first job at TSYS was a telephone bill collector. So every day I spoke with people just like my mom who were living paycheck to paycheck. They struggled with liquidity, struggled with finding different payment options to make their bill payments. And they were just often, navigating a system that wasn't built for them. And so I think those early experiences, especially my personal background, just really planted a seed in me that over the years has evolved into this passion for fueling ways that technology can break down those barriers and, simplifying the different financial ecosystems for people that every day struggle, right, just with making ends meet. And so providing those tools that people need, not just to survive, but to thrive within a digital.
I love it. Thrive. Unfortunately, our student who was supposed to be on the podcast is sick today. However, I know from a lot of the students that we interact with, financial, literacy is a big component of what you're talking about, making sure people have access to the right resources, but then are educated around how to navigate some of these use cases or scenarios where they're interacting with payments and with money and just being financially healthy, I call it, going forward. What are your insights on, your work at Green Dot and what Green Dot offers in the industry and the impact on financial accessibility?
At Green Dot, everything that we do is really rooted in this concept that access to financial services and tools should never be a privilege. It should be the norm for whoever you are. And our work really focuses on expanding that access. So whether it's through products that we have, like our direct-to-consumer mobile banking, which is GoToBank, or our embedded finance platform, ARC, which gives our partners the ability to embed financial solutions into their ecosystems. It really just helps bridge that gap. The Green Dot Network, which is in the money movement area that I support, is also another strong tool that we have that helps bridge cash to digital. And so we've spent the last few years really trying to transform our company into a platform company that offers all these different things under one roof. That gives businesses and consumers the ability to remove barriers to banking. And so when you remove those barriers is when you really create opportunity for the underserved and the underbanked.
Yeah, both sides. I love how you illustrated, it's just as equally important for the companies to be enabled to do that for their consumers and their customers. But then on the consumer side, they need to have those tools readily available and almost create some sort of equity across the marketplace to be able to say, hey, we can opt in and leverage Green Dot as a technology provider. It's interesting to see that across the market. But how big is this? You mentioned like a lot of locations, and I think I saw like 90,000 plus locations. Like how big are we talking?
Yeah, so the Green Dot Network and those money movement solutions is a really powerful physical infrastructure that we've built over the last 20 years. And so we have over 95,000 retail partnership locations nationwide. Those are very familiar brands to you: Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, 7-Eleven, Kroger. So whether you need to cash a check and load those funds onto a card, or load funds into your bank account or your prepaid card, pay a bill, right? And you are a cash preferred customer, the Green Dot Network really allows people to manage their money in the most convenient places for them, and most importantly, accessible places, right? So that's in fact, we're within 96% of the US within 3 miles. And so you have no trouble finding a location that can enable you to do these banking services instead of during traditional banking hours.
That's huge because when you talk about accessibility, being able to have it geographically accessible across, these areas is key. Love to hear that. So let's shift our focus to kind of doing a deep dive in digital payments, embedded finance, and how the future is shaping. I guess if you were able to predict the future, how do you feel like that role of embedded finance is expanding or can expand beyond banking and payments?
Yeah, so I think that embedded finance is really democratizing access in a very powerful way. So whether it's a gig platform or e-commerce platform or a brand that embeds financial tools right into their apps, so for example, like instant payments or digital wallets, it really removes friction. So ARC by Green Dot, which is our single source embedded finance solution platform, it brings all the capabilities together in one roof. So think about our bank charter, because we're FDIC charter bank, our APIs, fraud prevention, customer service, and the cash access piece, right? It means that our partners don't have to build it all themselves. They can get it all in one place, or as opposed to going to multiple different vendors or doing something themselves, which allows them to go to market faster. It really embraces the digital shift in a major way. So today's customers really expect digital first, mobile first experiences, right? And we are designing for that. But at the same time, we're not forgetting those that are not digitally native. So we like to pair that digital innovation with real world access. So whether it's through GoToBank or the Green Dot Network, we're combining that seamless app-based experience with a physical cash in and cash out network. And so it's the best of both worlds, essentially. Digital first, but not digitally exclusive.
Oh, that's powerful. Digitally first, but not digitally exclusive. I also, what came to mind when you were kind of illustrating that was social media and how, embedded finance is kind of taking storm in some of these one-off experiences. For me, as a avid shopper, I think it's dangerous. The fact that I can go to some retail website and make an instant kind of purchase through them, just creating all of those touch points where it's just of ease of access and usability, but being able to enable the people that you guys have on board as customers is pretty incredible stuff. So what do you think is next for fintech and payments in general regarding the financial inclusion?
So, when I think about the future, I think the future is all about building smarter, more personalized financial ecosystems that truly serve everyone. And so, AI and data can help for sure, but only if we're really intentional about equity and accessibility. And so, recently we actually did a survey with 250 different companies about how they felt about embedded finance. And what was amazing to see is that over 98% of those companies see that embedded finance is a growth driver for them. And over 82% of those companies really planned on increasing the investments that they make in embedded finance. So I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. It's just how do we layer in very specific personalized experiences on top of that embedded finance solution so that people can receive actions and call to actions in terms of financial advice or opportunities or offers right when they need them, as opposed to it being kind of an after.
I had a student on a previous podcast regarding AI make the recommendation that all of the card brands should have some sort of automated system that informs you, which card you should use at the transaction, at the point of transaction. So, like, if you had rewards and there's some sort of benefit to you reorganize which card you have top of wallet, that it would happen kind of during the transaction. And I'm like, man, these students have some great ideas.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I
Yeah,
that's
of
funny because
course.
my husband and I were actually talking about a solution like that recently. Like, how do we organize all of the credit cards in our wallet so that we make sure we use this one at the gas station and this one at the grocery store and this one for when I book a flight. So hopefully one of your students can develop that for us so it can help
That's a
us
great
reap the most reward.
So, shifting to our next topic, around inclusivity in this industry and how we create a space and promote just the opportunity for folks from different communities and backgrounds to thrive in the fintech industry. For yourself as a leader in fintech, how do you see that kind of shaping the industry?
Well, I mean, I am a advocate and will never cease to be an advocate that diversity fuels innovation. When teams really reflect the communities that they serve, the solutions are smarter. They're more human centered, right? And so in fintech, we constantly are building and it's moving so fast, right? We're building tools that impact everyday life. And so representation at all levels is increasingly important. So that's in leadership, in product, in policy. It's not just a nice to have, it's an essential. And that's at every level from entry level to executive. And so I continue to feel that as long as we continue to embrace inclusivity and ensuring that the products that we create help a broader audience, not just siloed cohorts of people, that will continue to shape the industry for what we all intend.
That's a great answer, Crystal. Thinking about also internally within your organization at Green Dot, you've mentioned that you guys have ERGs and you're leading an ERG at Green Dot. Why are ERGs important for these companies and for the employees that are
Yeah, so leading our leadership employee resource group has really been a very rewarding part of my journey here at Green Dot. ERGs really create a space for connection, support, and growth. With Green Dot, we're actually a remote first company, so most of us work from home. So it's extremely important that we find ways to become virtually engaged because we don't have that physical in person collaboration that a lot of other companies do. The leadership ERG in particular focuses, where we come together as a community really to empower development, mentorship. We embrace different leadership topics. It's not just about inclusion, it's about empowerment. And so we're helping to develop really the next generation of fintech leaders from the inside out. And most often, the team comes together with different topics that they want to talk about. In fact, this week we're doing a fireside chat with one of our women leaders in the company and just talking about different ways that she's overcome and grown throughout her career. And I think it's really important for those aspirational leaders as well as leaders that are within the organization to be able to hear those stories, right? And it really creates an opportunity to hear voices that may otherwise go unheard, especially in like a virtual environment.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important to have that community. And I think about in my career, over the span of 20 years, it didn't really catch on until much more recently to have those types of support mechanisms internally. And for some of our young students, I think they're also kind of looking where they're looking to join a company. It's interesting to think about back in the day, for me, it was about like how much money I'm going to make. Is there a career pathway and progression, expected or visible within that organization? Now they care about, much more different things about, what leadership, structure looks like and what the community and the culture. I hear company culture all the time and work-life balance. And so for the generation, I think coming in, they have that expectation where those resources weren't necessarily there for us, I think, back in the day, navigating the industry.
And I've
Love to
seen
hear your
too, like
feedback.
just where even social engagement, both
Yeah.
inside and outside the organization. So even within that leadership ERG, we talk about how to take different leadership roles even outside of work, right? And how to give back to our communities. How do we volunteer together? Green Dot does a great job with giving back in different ways and encouraging our team members to take time to go volunteer in their communities and to take leadership opportunities within their communities. And we try to encourage that further within the leadership ERG as well.
So thinking about, some of the work that you've done, leading the ERG and establishing and keeping that community going, you hit on some things about, early career. What are kind of your recommendations for next gen talent, looking to get into the industry and then also once they're on the other side and trying to navigate growing and pursuing pathway?
I would say it's very, very important to stay curious and stay committed. Fintech, especially, like I mentioned earlier, is just always evolving, is rapidly changing. Being open to learning could really be your superpower, right? And that means, not being afraid to ask questions, raising your hand for different opportunities so that you can continue to learn. But then that also naturally helps you build relationships in your network. I can't explain, is just like so powerful, especially in this industry, especially with so many different remote companies, so many spread out all over US. You need a network of people that help not only mentor you but sponsor and advocate for you in spaces that you're not in. And I would say, like, one of the most important things is just bringing your full self to the table. And what I mean by that is not shrinking yourself really to fit into certain spaces, because your lived experiences are really a strength, not a weaknesses. They help you build better products for others. And so again, I would say just stay curious and be really committed to learning.
I love that you said, you need people from, different levels at the table, with different backgrounds at the table as well to brainstorm and help innovate on those solutions. And I think for students, you think, oh, I don't have, the most experience. I'm just coming into the industry. But it's funny because I think about us all being users. Like we've all been out there and we've had challenges that we've had to overcome, or we've seen opportunities, like the example I mentioned earlier with AI from a student. They have such creative, innovative mindsets, and I think it's
They
nice to
do.
hear you say that they just need to be open to showing up.
They
Um,
do.
yeah.
In fact, I have a 20-year-old daughter. She's a student at Georgia State, actually, and find myself reaching out to her, like, what do you think about this? Because her perspective on life, like just being birthed into a place that already has so many digital ways to do things, right? Like, whereas, I grew up when internet kind of first started to come to life, right? And I still can remember a time when it wasn't there. She doesn't know a time when it ever wasn't. And so a lot of times her perspective helps me to see very differently than what I would think is natural or easy to understand. And oftentimes it's like, why is this so hard, mom? Like, why are you making it so hard? And I've noticed that her generation really appreciates, again, like personalized, very easy, simple, quick, easy way to do things, whereas it's a lot different from my experience. And so students, I think, can really paint a powerful viewpoint that we all need, and it's valuable in any product design, especially as we're migrating to a more digitally adapt fintech environment.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about, you mentioned mentorship and sponsorship and for young people looking for mentors and trying to navigate networking? What are your thoughts on some recommendations for students trying to establish those relationships?
So mentors, a lot of times, and I learned this later in my career, you think, oh, I need like one mentor. You need actually about 10 different mentors, and they all will differently serve different purposes in your life, and different times, right, in your career. I have a couple mentors that have been with me for a very long time, but I also have many mentors that were there for a season in my career. And I think it's important to seek them out. Some will come naturally just in your career, but it's also important as a mentee to go seek out relationships, right? Especially when there's things that you want to learn or you want to gain from. And I've always found that approaching someone and really honoring them in a way to say, like, I really want to learn from you and I really want to understand how you did this and how I can be better at it. Most people are flattered and then want to help you, right? And so I say be courageous in asking, right? You need both mentors and sponsors. You need a sponsorship network that's able, again, to like advocate for you when you're not in the room. Mentors are giving you advice and helping you guide and lead you to your own self decision. But sponsors are people that when an opportunity comes available, they seek you out, right? And say, I think this will be something that's great for you. Or I mentioned you in this room that, you have this opportunity that could be very beneficial to you. And so those different roles are very important in career acceleration. And so I think should make a conscious effort to have both types within your circle.
I love that you depicted kind of the how you can approach doing it, because I think students hear about mentorship and sponsorship, but your tactics, kind of outline, I think, a step-by-step kind of phase approach that students can take. Because I think for a lot of them, to your point, there's a little bit of anxiety, social anxiety, and you're not necessarily sure how you're going to be received on the other side. But I love that you said, most people would be flattered. And I took that approach when I was coming up. I'm like, yeah, will you be my mentor? And they're like, I would love to.
Yeah.
And it just opened up a whole relationship for years. I got mentors who have been, it's so funny you mentioned I have those that are like, there's a time and place that I needed that mentorship. But then I have those mentors who have been, 20 years tenured. They've
Yeah.
seen the ups and downs in my career. They've seen some pivots, and then to your other point about having, kind of this, I call it board of advisors. I've transitioned out of the industry into this role into academia. And I'm like, that was a learning curve for myself. And so I have, a whole new, 4 or 5 people that I need to bring on board to help, guide me in this transition. That's a shift for me. And so love both points, because I think that's very important for our students to think about and consider.
I would add to that too that like being on both sides as a mentee and a mentor, oftentimes your mentors are learning just as much from you as you are for them. And so it's really important to bring value to your mentor as well. Like I mentioned, just in the natural course of life, I'm a mentor to my daughter in some ways, right? But she is so much of a mentor to me in certain ways, and learning about how she views the world through her eyes
Yeah.
that does not come naturally to me. And so, even in a very formal mentor mentee relationship, right, the same things kind of happen. And that a good mentor mentorship relationship evolves in that sense, right, where you guys will be so comfortable that you'll begin to learn from each other. And it's a reciprocal relationship as opposed to just a one sided one.
So let's talk about how our audience can connect with you and with Green Dot Resources. There were so many things that I know we covered in this discussion, and I know you're always, connecting and connecting other people in the industry as well. So I guess first, how people connect with you, and then let's talk about Green Dot and if people want to learn more about Green Dot.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Crystal with a C, Crystal Bryant-Minter. And if you want to learn more about the work that we're doing at Green Dot and ARC in our embedded finance platform, you can find us at arc.greendot.com or our homepage, which is Green Dot.
Thank you so much, Crystal, for joining us.
Thank you
We
so
will
much.
put that information that you just shared in the show notes. So for anyone that's listening to this podcast, you'll see that linked in the podcast show notes. But looking forward to seeing you again soon. Crystal, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much for having me. It was great.